My name is Celina, and I am currently living in Japan. And I am a bilingual English and Japanese streamer, but also a show host. And most people know me by my meme, which is the world's first pro horror gamer. I play a lot of horror games, and I do a lot of cover on that too. So, yeah.
Awesome. I know I saw you do the last Silent Hill transmission when they announced it was Silent Hill 2, right? When they announced the
Yes.
remake? Yes. I saw that you did that and I just like that's so exciting to get to just do stuff for the big AAA companies, right? Uh,
Yes.
you know, I wanted to ask, how did you get into streaming? Where did you start?
So I started off as I'm sure most people start off this way, but I had a favorite YouTuber that I used to watch. These days I'm too busy to catch anybody stream, but this streamer mainly covered horror games himself, and it was just a nice um just a hobby of mine to watch his stream while I live about my day. But one day, I came across a tweet on Twitter, which was a an audition for a an official content creator for a Japanese gaming team, and I always wanted to start streaming on my own, but I never really had um, that moment where it kind of just pushed my back. So I just out of when I saw that tweet, just without thinking, I applied, and thankfully I got into the interview, and then they hired me for their bilingual streamer. So that's where I pretty much started. Even after I left this team, I am still, you know, just continue streaming because it's just really part of my life now.
And you and many other people, right? Because it's streaming has been this crazy thing that's just taken off.
Hmm.
Honestly, like I never really myself got into like watching streams until about like I want to say like 2 or 3 years ago because it was still
Hmm.
kind of a foreign thing for me personally. When I grew growing up, I just did nothing but YouTube. Like
Hmm.
would just watch nothing but YouTube. So I was only familiar with like that really curated, structured, scripted sort of content that people would put back in the day, like all the video game reviews and stuff. So streaming to me is still this endlessly fascinating thing, and streaming being so popular, what would you say was the hardest thing about starting off as a streamer?
Well, for me personally, I might have a different perspective compared to other people because thankfully, I feel like most the hardest thing about starting streaming is for most people, I'm pretty sure it's like anxiety. Just a lot of anxiety, whether it be like, will I have anybody watching me, or will I be just talking to the void, or even if they do get people, it's just a whole anxiety of talking to people, and showing yourself, if that's your thing, if having a webcam is your thing. But for me, thankfully, I already had like an experience of speaking in front of like a bunch of people. I was already a stage host at that point.
Hmm.
So I think my difficulty into getting into streaming was I feel like just the technical stuff for me. I'm very bad with computers. I'm very bad with like what equipment I need. So I started off as a PlayStation 4 broadcaster because PlayStation 4 itself has the broadcasting implemented in it, which you can tie your Twitch account to.
Yeah.
So and you also need to all you need to do is just buy a PS4 camera, and I had the most not the best quality mic that you can get from Amazon. And at the time that was kind of enough. So, but yeah, getting all that ready was, I think that was the hardest part for me.
I agree because I do some streaming myself. It's really casual, and
Hmm.
honestly, that like PlayStation streaming thing is so handy.
It is.
It's
Hmm.
honestly so handy because I've streamed a couple of games on there. I think the last thing off the PS4 that I streamed was Siren.
Oh,
Um,
mhm.
yeah, Siren. I kind of slammed my head against that game for a couple of days. It's such an interesting game, but
It is. Mhm.
it's so there's a lot of friction. A lot of people like saying there's some games have friction in them, and that one I
Mhm.
think has so much. But yeah, no, that the PS4 streaming thing is such a boon. It's
Mhm.
amazing, and so going from that, what would you say was when you really blew up as a streamer? When people knew Celina, the streamer.
I feel like there were two times that happened. The earliest one being, I started playing a lot of Tekken, which is a fighting game, Tekken 7.
Mm-hmm.
I really wasn't that big in fighting games. As a gamer in general. Like I've played it in the past, but I was never like serious about it or anything. And I started trying to learn Tekken from scratch. Um, and that happened to attract a lot of people who do play that game already, and a lot of people do like, I believe, to watch newer players kind of improving through their streams. Um, and that was also when I was invited to another gaming team based in the US, and they're very known for having a lot of pro Tekken players, and obviously not as a pro, but they invited me as a content creator,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that was one moment that did kind of had people know who I am just a little bit. Um, but I think the second biggest one, I think, which was what led to me getting Twitch partner, was just me focusing on. So I kind of stepped away from tech in a bit because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really see like a significant growth. Yeah, I had a very stable viewership, but I felt like I should like put something else in there while also keeping that.
Mm-hmm.
So I started streaming more horror games, which I already did, but I wasn't like really focused on it. But the moment I did have a lot of people watch me who are not big horror game fans themselves. Like they don't play them, but they like watching other people play it, and
Mm-hmm.
and they get to get into that game without them, having to play it themselves, which tends to be big. Um, and it's just amongst other gamers, but yeah, as soon as I started doing that, I feel like a lot of people showed interest, and a lot of the horror games I play are also not only the newer ones, but I also play indie games, I play retros, and just having a wide variety even within that niche genre did invite a lot of people to watch me, especially playing retro ones. People will come watch you not because you play horror games, but because you're playing a retro game.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of branch out like that. Um, and yeah, that's how I. And obviously, like I was playing, when you play a certain genre for a long time, like other streamers also find you, and I feel like a lot of my current friends, who are also horror game streamers, found
Mm-hmm.
me, and they would raid me, they would give me a shout out, and I think that's how I was able to grow significantly, and that's how I ended up qualifying for getting Twitch partner. So yeah, that was a pretty big moment for me.
Awesome. So now, and you're known now because of that as the pro horror game streamer, right?
Yes.
I love that. I love that as a title, honestly, because I think that's just so. It's awesome to think that there is someone out there who is really good at horror games. Would you like? And I just have to ask, and I feel like this is a question that a lot of people ask, especially those that don't play horror games. Like, why horror games? Like, what about horror games attracts you? To continue to play them.
So I wasn't like, I did play horror games like every now and then even as a kid, but like I was never really like a big horror fan or anything like that. At least I didn't have that awareness when I was a kid. I think I was more of a JRPG kid, just like any other kids out there. But when I look back, I do feel that I was probably always a horror fan. I just didn't have awareness of that. I loved watching horror movies despite it, just giving me nightmares. Um, And I think what really draws me to horror games or horror genre in general is that it's kind of like riding a roller coaster. You know it's going to be scary, but you still like are like unless you have a fear of heights, you're kind of attracted to it. Like the ecstatic part of the fear kind of draws people into it. I feel like
Hmm.
humans are kind of weird creatures. They would like to do risky things. They would like to go out of their way to experience that sort of ecstatic moments. Um, and along with that, I feel like a lot of horror games, maybe not every, but like many horror games that I like, at least, have a very, very complicated but very well written story that that you can't really experience from other games.
Hmm.
And that can be it can be a very grim story. It can be very daunting, but it's very uniquely to horror genre. And again, it's kind of something that you have to play, you have to experience yourself to you know to dive into that sort of story. And I really do appreciate a lot of the storytelling a lot of horror games do.
Yeah, and it really, like for me, I agree because when I was a child, I also didn't really like horror. In fact, I was a massive coward. I was afraid of everything. I hated needles. I hated the dentist.
Mhm.
I pissed my mom off. Honestly, she was like, "What's with you? Like you're afraid of so many things." And then I remember when I was in elementary school, this kid.
Mhm.
We weren't really friends. We were just like, we just kind of knew each other. He's like, "Hey, man,
Mhm.
like I got this game and it's like you shoot zombies and it's like really
Mhm.
scary. Like you should look at it." And it was Resident Evil 3 on the PlayStation,
Oh,
the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And I was a child and
oh boy.
I was super scared, but it's like this stupid macho thing you have as a boy where you're like, well, I don't want to be
Mhm.
afraid anymore. I'm a boy. I don't have to be afraid. So I'm
Mhm.
like, you know what? Yeah, man, lend it to me. And he did. And I took it
Mhm.
home and I'm like really scared opening the plate my PlayStation and I put in the disc and I turned it on and I'm like, oh gosh, it's gonna be so scary. And then I moved Jill around a little bit. I'm like, well, she moves kind of weird. Why does she move like
Oh, yeah.
that? And then, because I was so used to, you get so used to just a button doing one thing and not like holding two buttons to do something like you would when
Yeah.
I was tank controlling games. And that kind of pivoted me into horror. And ever since then, I've just sampled all kinds of horror myself. It's such a fascinating genre.
Mhm.
So it's good to hear that it captivates people in a similar way because yeah, storytelling is really important, particularly for horror games because I think blood and guts only get you so far, right? So you called yourself the bilingual streamer, but I follow you on Twitter and I do notice that you've been practicing a third language. Me being from LA, I'm just a little interested to just know like how confident are you in your Spanish?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. Like all the Spanish that I've been taught, like all I'd say like 90% of my Twitch mods are Spanish speakers, and you can kind of guess, like learning things from your mods or viewers, they teach you the most heinous, words I probably can't say right now. But I am trying to learn very basic, conversational Spanish right now. And sometimes, listening to other people speak, I can pick up a few words and
Hmm.
kind of kind of guess what they might be talking about. But and as much as I think it's a rather easier language for me as a Japanese speaker because of the pronunciation
Oh
similarity,
yeah. Hmm.
I feel like it's also a bit complicated on its own. I'm sure like there's just for instance the word I every time I try to tweet in Spanish and I try to refer to my streams, I accidentally use the stream for like a river, right? Like there's a totally different word for that, and a stream is a stream for me. So,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't have known unless like that gets pointed out. So, I think and the Japanese language has that too. English is that too, but like I feel like Spanish has a lot of just like a lot of exceptions, a lot of rules. And it's gonna take me a while for for me to catch up onto that. But slowly but surely, I would like to actually be able to say that I know three languages.
I think you'll get there. I've seen some of your Spanish tweets. I think you're making really good progress. I'd say my Spanish is terrible. My mom kind of beat it into me because I'm Mexican. Uh, so, she's like, you got to learn because how are you going to talk to your grandparents? And so, well, my Spanish is really, it's LA Spanish. That's what I'll call it because it's
Mhm.
very, a lot of loan words. Like Japanese has its loan words, right?
Oh, it's
And Spanish has its. Oh, I guess LA Spanish you could say has its own loan words. So, like, if I were to try to tweet in Spanish and mention a stream uh, in Spanish, I'd probably just say stream. Mira, mira, aquí está el stream.
oh, okay. Oh,
Ven a mi stream. But it's like, and because I feel like at least these days people are in tune enough with the internet that they know, like, okay, stream, they're gonna be recording themselves live
okay.
on Twitch. Though there probably is some official word that I just don't
I was gonna say, oh, if I wish people told me that, I would have just said stream.
know. I'll tell you just because like as an example, I'll give you this. So like in proper Spanish, to park your car is estacionar. That is, you're parking your car. Voy a estacionarme aquí. I'm going to park here. uh growing up, I would always, like, my mom would always say voy a parquear aquí, which is
Mhm,
which is weird. It's because I said
mhm,
that to a relative in Mexico, and they
mhm.
looked at me and they're like, "What? Like, what did you what did you just say?" And I'm like, you're gonna stop the car. He's like, "Oh, estacionar." I'm like, "Oh, that's the
Oh,
that's the word."
oh
So
Lord.
like people who live in the states,
Mhm.
they use a lot of loan words with their Spanish, and it's kind of, that is a culture in of itself. Uh,
Okay,
very
okay.
very fascinating to get into that nitty gritty, and then you have the other gradients like people from Spain have their own type of Spanish. It's very
Oh
distinct.
yes. Hmm.
Um, as well as people from Chile or other Spanish speaking countries. Their Spanish is just very distinct, and when you listen to it enough, it's like dialects in Japanese. You'll kind of just notice. Um, yeah, it's really interesting. Language is such a fascinating thing. And you being a streamer, you're communicating with so many people. Whenever you do stream, how would you say it's like? What would you say is the importance of like cultural crossover in that instance? Then, uh, have you ever considered like how important it is for like cultural sharing amongst people on the internet?
Um, yes, I never really thought about it until probably like in the later years of me streaming, which is like recent. But I think most of my demographics are Western people. I think number one is US, two is like the UK, and three I think Mexico comes in very close. But a lot of my viewers, they are like they really show interest when I start speaking about my life over here in Tokyo.
Hmm.
It's like the cultural differences, both positive and negative. And I feel like a lot of my viewers like do engage in that and show interest, which is a very positive thing. It's because I know how complicated things can be, especially a lot of people now that COVID has become less of a threat. More people are traveling, and a lot of people have been traveling to Japan
Hmm.
in these recent years. And a lot of them, I do have viewers come to me asking me, "Hey, I'm going to be visiting soon. Like, what should I be careful? Like, because I think a lot of people have seen, how we've been getting a lot of problematic IRL streamers
Hmm. Yeah.
causing trouble, and I feel like a lot of people, like even the non-streamers, people who travel, are probably paranoid that they don't want to be that person, and they want to be careful as possible. So they want to ask, what are like the common sense rules over there? Like, how should I, where should I go? How should I act? Kind of thing. And I do love sharing just very basic stuff. And in return, especially because my viewers do know I'm trying to learn Spanish, I do get taught a lot of cultural things um, that I've never known, and it's kind of an eye opener because like I feel like a child learning new things again, and it's just surprising how different like the culture is. Even like we're all same humans, but we have such different like backgrounds, such different traditions, and like some of them are just like really surprising to me, and in a positive way. So I think it's pretty important, and I feel like streaming is a good way of you know having people from different parts of the world just share stories, share backgrounds, and it's been pretty fun in that terms too.
So to get into like a little more of the nitty gritty, since we're touching on streaming, it's March, it's Women's Month, and we're celebrating the accomplishments of women in various sectors. I was raised by a woman. My mom, single mom, it's tough for the ladies. They
Mhm.
deal with a lot, and I'm fairly familiar with the internet. I think we both are with the internet and streaming.
Mhm.
You being a female streamer, what would you say are the biggest differences between yourself and your male counterparts? And before you answer, you share what you're comfortable with. I'm not going to ask you to share anything that maybe makes you feel a certain way. It's whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Well, I feel like every streamer, and both male and female, do go through this to a certain degree, but feel like we get I, I feel like from my experience, get a more intensified parasocialism,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. And it's kind of surprising because I personally do not do any content um, that is not suited for work or anything that's very I don't know, that pushes the idea of parasocialism, if that makes sense. I'm not a VTuber or like a lot of streamers, like especially VTubing. What I've noticed kind of suffers from this too because they kind of like speak to their viewers as if they're their friends or they're very close, and I feel like um, sometimes that viewers will take it the wrong way, or they kind of like take it to a whole different step that that kind of gives them the idea that we're actually friends kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I personally I think I'm pretty friendly with my viewers. We like a lot of like my every stream, like my first 2 hours or so is just chatting. I just talk to my viewers, just catching up with life, or just talking about things that happened recently, kind of like my diary in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
um and although I don't think I personally approach my viewers in a sense where I can be giving them the wrong idea or something, I do get people who think they are, I think people who just kind of cross the boundaries that's always present there. I make sure to tell my viewers that there's always, like, for any streamers, for anybody, there's always a boundary that you need to respect and shouldn't be crossed. um but um but regardless, there will be a fair share of people who would just who probably won't really see that, won't really understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, and I know men get this too, but I feel like as a woman, I think a lot of the angle does become like a romantic parasocial relationship that
Mm-hmm.
especially because, well, I mean, my viewership, I think my demographic is mainly male.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I feel like that can go to a very just very extreme, and to a point where stalking happens, and like I get very disturbing DMs or emails. I had a, I think for me it went as far as a certain somebody sent a email about me to my workplace at the
Mm.
time,
Oh my God.
and it got pretty bad. And again, I know that can happen to men as well. But I feel like as a woman and me talking about my experience to my other peers who also stream, who are guys, you know, they seem like they get very shocked listening to my story, and as much as they also get weird people approaching them, like it's just on a different spectrum, if that makes sense.
Hmm. No, I've obviously being a man, my experiences with other men are gonna be very different from from the perspective of a woman. So I obviously cannot entirely relate to what you said, but I do, like, I have heard, and even my mother and the women in my life have mentioned to me, like, some guys are weird, and they can be a little much and maybe misinterpret certain intentions, and I think it's just unfortunate that having a bigger platform seems to just amplify that. And that to say that I do respect that you're, like, share, like, speaking about this pretty earnestly, because I think it's important for, like, audiences to, like, sort of be aware that, like, this stuff happens and that it's not okay. I've never myself have never really understood, like, a parasocial relationship, because I can't fathom that the other person on the screen even knows I exist. They just
Mhm.
know I'm watching them, and they probably appreciate that I'm watching them. But for me, I just can't. It's like, but they're doing their thing, and when the stream's off, they're gonna live their life, and I'm here doing my
Mhm.
thing. So to me, that's always been just such a strange thing, and it's really unfortunate that you and others have just experienced this form of parasocial relationship. Um, you know, um, what kind of, like, if you were to give advice to, like, a fairly new, I guess, another like a fairly new female streamer, what kind of advice would you maybe want to give them, in regards to this?
um I think this is something that I told myself, and I don't really like telling other people this because it sounds like it's enabling it. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people when they get into streaming, especially women, they tell themselves like, well, at least I did. Just tell myself that um, regardless of what I do, like let's say like I'm like the most perfect person out there, but there will always be somebody who would not like you just for existing. Um, they whether that be jealousy or they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. You'll always have people saying nasty things to you. The more attention you get, especially and one of them being, oh, you're only people only watch you because you're a girl and you're pretty, or just for being a woman. That's all they like. So a lot of your stuff, a lot of the things that you do might get discredited just because you're a woman, and people will just like overlook at the accomplishments or the efforts you've been putting into your content. Um, but I would like to tell newer people that that'll happen to everybody, and what's most important is listening to the people who actually sit there and watch you and like you, because again, we all know how a loud minority, if they stand out, they stand out
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and especially negative comments. Um, they stand out more than positive ones, unfortunately. And it's just kind of how our brain works. And you just gotta kind of tell yourself, convince yourself that they're not your demographic. Those aren't the people who watch you. There might be people who do hate watch you, but again, that's like that's the smallest percent in your whole demographic. But at the same time, though, don't let other people tell you that, you know, oh, you signed up for this. Of course you're gonna get this. Like you
Mm-hmm.
knew you were gonna get all this, because I feel like that's something that you can tell yourself, but I don't think anybody else has the right to tell you that, you know, oh, this is a part of being popular, a part of being famous. You just kind of got to live with it because
Mm.
that just, you know, dismisses the whole issue. So, um, yeah, it's like you can convince yourself that, but yeah, don't let other people tell you that, and just kind of like, um, you know, make sure you have a safe circle, make sure you have people who you can talk to. And I guess one, especially like this is something that I realized myself recently, but make sure you have friends out of the content creator circle,
Mm.
because I have
Absolutely.
a I have a lot of great content creator friends that I love talking to, I love hanging out with. Um, but again, it's like it's kind of at the same time, it's like you're talking to people at your workplace, right? And you kind of can't forget about job, you can't forget about content creation when you're in that circle. So always have like friends outside of that who you can vent to, um, who you can trust that they're not going to throw some wild information about you on the internet. Uh,
Right.
yeah, definitely need a safe place like that.
I think it's like with any most with any job you have to have like a life outside of it, and I imagine just streaming video games as cool as that is, you have to still exist outside of the internet and video games, right? It's definitely healthy to try to do something more outside of your immediate circle, and I think that's really good advice, honestly, because when people get sucked into their careers, they kind of just see that, and it's like a tunnel. You kind of don't see anything else aside from that. So that's really good advice, I'd say. And yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with every. I think the full spectrum of the streaming experience. Uh, looking to the future, what do you think is like? What would you want to change? For streaming going forward.
Oh, is that for myself or
Or I guess maybe yeah for yourself. Let's say for yourself.
um for myself in terms of streaming? I do kind of want to get out of my comfort zone because as much as I love streaming horror games, sometimes you know you kind of like if you can stick with that forever, that's great. I have a friend who just sticks strictly with horror games, and he plays other games outside of streaming, but he never streams that because he knows that's not what his viewers want to see,
Mm,
and he is able to stick with that. But for me though, I would like to branch out more, and I think a lot of that can be like IRL streaming. I started doing that just a little bit because of my living situation has changed a lot recently, and
mm,
now I kind of mix IRL streams with normal streams. So I just take my phone out and walk around Tokyo, showing my viewers what it's like. Which surprisingly, but also not surprisingly, I have a lot of people who show interest in that.
mm,
Just seeing what Shibuya looks like for like you know in real life, not just like films and you know anime. Um,
right.
so like I would like to like add more of that, and I guess also I something that I haven't really done, but like collaborating with other streamers, because I think that's one of the hardest things to do, especially with the time zone difference for me at least, and it's talking to a friend versus streaming with a friend becomes like it's kind of a different setting, and it becomes hard depending on what you're doing. So that sort of things, I definitely like want to kind of look into and start adding to my own stream. And just sort of just branching out in general instead of sticking to one niche, which is really hard because I feel like a lot of people experience this, but like, I don't know, for instance, if you strictly streamed Minecraft, and if that was your whole, you know, thing, and you start doing something else, your viewership does significantly go down
Right.
because that's not what they're here for. Right?
Right.
And then that can really put people into slump, and that's I think that's one hardship a lot of streamers go through, that they feel they're afraid to stop doing what they're doing now, or not even just stopping but like changing a few things because of um, seeing those numbers go down. But I kind of want to get myself to a point where that's not what I'm like, yeah, that's not what I'm focusing on because do I throughout my whole streaming career, I did notice I started off as this just as a hobby, and I was, I would have fun. I wouldn't care if I only had like 5 viewers or three the next day. I was still having so much fun doing it. But obviously, like naturally, as the numbers go up, you start to think more about the numbers, and which is a sad reality. But when you're rewarded for um, bigger viewership, you kind of want to stick with that, or you want to make it bigger, and you kind of go into that just rabbit hole of just kind of adjusting your own content to like solely to satisfy your viewers. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
No,
And I'm not going to say that's wrong, but that can really be mentally tolling.
definitely. It's that like I feel like it's like that artistic mindset of like you want to create art or works that satisfy you, but you also maybe at times want to create things that satisfy your audience, and
Hmm.
it might be just the same thing you've made 20 times over already.
Yeah.
It's definitely a struggle for many. I'd say for many artistic mediums, and I would consider streaming like a form of art in and of itself because people get really creative. So yeah, it's that's the balancing act, right? It's just trying to
Yeah.
figure that out. Yeah, and so if and this will be probably the last major question that I have for you, but
Mhm.
like if you could change one thing about streaming as like a whole, so like this is now like outside of you, what would it be?
Hmm. That's a hard question. What would I change streaming as a whole?
Like it could be one
Mm,
aspect of it.
okay. Hmm. I would personally, just for the sake of our mental health, I do feel like a lot of times, maybe not every platform, but a lot of streaming platforms kind of um, push it to the point where we're kind of like there's a lot of systems or functions within the streaming platform that kind of forces us to grind more and more and more.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be I heard there's a platform in Japan where um, they have like a ranking and like a visible ranking of streamers that every viewers can see,
Mm-hmm.
and that changes depending on their viewership and all. And when people see their favorite streamer coming, pretty low, they, try to hustle by, getting more people to watch, or giving more like tips, money, to get their streamer up there, and it becomes like the competition. I feel like is toxic in a way because
Mm-hmm.
when the streamers themselves see that, they are kind of like in the mindset where, oh, I need to do more, I need to grind more, I'm almost there, and it can really that sort of um, that sort of stuff can leak into your real life and kind of ruin you, and that just becomes your whole identity, and you kind of can't you have a hard time separating streaming from your private life, and I feel like that is very unhealthy. I've seen a lot of streamers struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really would, if I can change things, I would want to make it less competitive among streamers, because I have a streamer friend who told me that streaming isn't a race, it's a marathon. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah.
trying to, you know, sure, you're trying to improve your content and stuff, but you're not, doing that so you can outrun other streamers, or, make more money than the other streamers. And the moment you get into that, just cycle, it's kind of endless, and you just wear yourself out. So yeah, I feel like that sort of aspect needs to be, looked into so that, we don't start burning ourselves out.
Yeah, burnout is very real, and I think in
Mhm.
many jobs, and for streaming in particular, it starts off as this fun thing, and you just get so invested in it that you're killing yourself to make it work. That yeah, burnout, that the burnout just becomes so real. It's a really tough thing to see on like outside of that, and it's I imagine it's even harder when you're actually in it. So yeah, I think that'd be a really I think that'd be a really significant thing is to just make it less of that rat race and more of like a of healthy competition as opposed to this toxic endless grind that people do. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing all of this with me, Celina. And if people wanted to look for you, where could they find you? What are your handles on the various platforms?
Oh, so I'm mostly active on outside of streaming, I'm active on Twitter under alphabet TKN0801. And if you're for streaming, I'm by CELINA underscore 0801, Celina 0801. So yeah, those are my most active platforms. If I'm not streaming, I'm probably on Discord or Twitter. So
Oh man. Well, thank you for, your time that you've spent, talking to me. I really
thank
appreciate
you.
you giving me your time. And thanks, for sharing so much. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much.